Heavenly Father, we're so thankful we can embark into another quarter. We will go into what we've termed the great controversy meta-narrative so that our vision will go past what's going on around us and past what's going on even in the world into the spiritual conflict between Christ and Satan. Lord, as we go into the lessons for this quarter, always remind us that Christ has already won. And with the victory that is His, we can trust Him and share that victory with Him and be overcomers of the enemy and all the trials and the pain around us and celebrate the power, the sovereignty, and the grace of our Lord. Be with us as we open up the study. May you give us teachable minds. May you give us responsive hearts. And, oh Lord, may we be drawn closer to you after this lesson preview. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so we go into Revelation 12. This is the key to the great controversy. Let me just introduce this in several ways. There is a recent book entitled The Great Comet of Christmas. I don't know if you've heard about it. So there's been a very big question as to, what was the Star of Bethlehem, right? If you read and then there has been so many theories as it was an alignment of Jupiter and some of the planets. Some people were saying it was the angels that sang to the shepherds. It was a supernatural phenomenon. Until this one guy who has a doctorate in Cambridge University, a Bible scholar, got intrigued. Every time he did the project, he comes across this issue of the Star of Bethlehem. He said he couldn't resist it. He started doing a research. And then from being a biblical theologian, he became an astronomer himself. And he has a very strong case, probably the biggest landmark research so far with scientific backing. The Great Comet of Christmas just was released September this year. And most of the well-respected Christian authors, like no less than John Lennox. John Lennox is the chair, teaches mathematics in Oxford University and debates Richard Dawkins. It's probably one of the biggest apologists. He endorses the book heartily. But there is the theory of the writer of the book. What made the wise men come to Jerusalem to look for Jesus?
They saw the star.
Okay, so why? I mean, everybody see stars. Okay, even if the star, if you read the account, Herod inquired as to when they saw the star, which means other people saw the star, not just the wise men. Why were they able to relate the Star of Bethlehem to the coming king? That was the issue. It's so much the comet, because the comet shows up. People will see that. The reason why I say it's a comet, it's not the star, is because the stars shine. The star shines, it's very fickle. It goes away right away. But the comet stays a little longer. It depends on how much dust it's got, okay? And then he said, we have seen a star in the east. And then they saw the star rising again, okay? So it's really not a star, it's an astronomical object. And rising, they really don't. Does the sun rise? You right? Yeah, this does? No, no. The sun doesn't rise. We rotate around the sun. But it's based on our human limitations. You see that. So when we say the rising of the star, a comet approaches the sun. Okay, these are like ice balls, and then because of the heat, it becomes a catalyst to all the chemicals, and it triggers like a chemical reaction. And then of course, because the sun shines on the comet, it spews out light. Okay, and there'll be a head and there'll be a tail, and heliacal, I forget the term. Helio is about the sun. The closer they are to the sun, they disappear, right? Because the sun is so bright. And then they go around the sun. It's just within the solar system. When they go around the sun and they somehow show up again, that's what we call the rising of the comet, because we see them again. It's not really as rising, but it's the phenomenon that the human eye sees. Okay, so we got a lot of it. The bottom line is If you read Revelation, go to Revelation chapter 12. It is one of the texts that he uses, aside from the text in Matthew. He said that Revelation chapter 12 might have been communicated to the Magi so that they'll understand. Somebody read the first 3 verses of Revelation 12.
Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then, being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his heads.
Okay, and then we will read the rest of the text. So there's a great sign in heaven. What's the great sign? What is the description? There's a woman. Okay, clothed with the sun. What else? With the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. And again, so and cried out. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous dragon. Okay, this is not the lesson study, because this is an intro for what we're trying to do. This woman, okay, not based on our discussion this afternoon, according to astronomy and astrology, which is very close to each other, you cannot. They say they cannot separate astrology as pagan astrology as an astronomy was. If you were an astrologer, you were also an astronomer, and they said that Babylon was the NASA during the time of Jesus. That was where they researched all the astronomy. They tracked the courses of the stars and the constellations for years. They're very sophisticated. This woman is really Virgo, right? Virgo is one of the constellations.
Yeah.
What does Virgo stand for? It is the constellation of the Virgin. All right?
Yeah.
And then they saw 12 stars. There was a point in time during the time of Herod, according to the record of Josephus, that a lot of the stars were aligned. Okay? Pointing to Virgo. Okay? Which is the Virgin. And then there was another wonder. What was the wonder? A dragon appeared. It escapes me right now. There's another constellation close to Virgo, which is called the dragon.
The dragon.
Okay, I forgot that there's a term. I'll probably share it with you. So basically, they were not just reading the scripture straight. These were astronomers looking at the constellations. And insofar as the constellation is concerned, there will be a virgin, there will be an alignment of the stars, and there will be a dragon attacking the virgins. Okay? And long story short, this guy had the small head with a very long tail. This comet showed up. It pointed to Bethlehem. Okay? And from Jerusalem to Bethlehem is about 5-6 miles. So they know the general vicinity of where the Messiah will be born. But they had problems. Where in the 5-6 mile radius is the sun? So they went to Herod and they talked to him. Okay? So, but this is one of the passages that the author of the book, The Great Comet of Christmas, uses for us to understand the mindset of the Magi and those people understanding. Of course, we also know how were they influenced. How did they have an idea of a coming king of the Jews? When in fact Babylon, based on study of Jeremiah, captured Judah and there was no more nation. How in the world will they think of a king coming for the Jews? Who taught them?
Probably.
Who?
Daniel.
Daniel was there, okay? Aside from Daniel, they rubbed shoulders with the Jews. The Jews prospered there, okay? There's a culture that tells me there's a coming Messiah. So they have a messianic sense. And what did this Magi do? Their profession is to study the stars and astronomy. Therefore, while they're doing this, they relate what they know in the stars to what they learned from Daniel and learned from the Jews. And you put 2 and 2 together. That's why it's a very compelling argument that, in fact, it was a comet that happened. And they said, well, if you lose the supernatural element there, it will not be as impressive anymore. No, the author was saying, no, it will be more impressive because God uses nature to align nature in order for him to be able to introduce a particular proclamation. That is the gospel, right? He uses the Jewish feast to point you to something. But that's an intro. Because how does it relate to? I just want to put a Christmas overtone on what we're trying to study. But really, the study for the next quarter is about the great controversy. And the great controversy, insofar as we laid out, probably summarized best in Revelation 12. Revelation 12 is the summary of the great controversy. Now let me explain this to you. If you go to the Christian world today, the basic approach in evangelism, and when you share the gospel, is the justification of the sinner, which is justification by faith. You know, you listen to Billy Graham, you listen to Greg Laurie, you listen to a lot of the preachers, they will preach about the gospel and the salvation of sinners. So really the main thrust of the message is, here is God, He became a man, He sent His Son, He died for you, you accept His Son, and you will be saved. Right? So remember the five solas of the Reformation? What were they? Sola gratia, sola Christo, sola fide, sola scriptura. So they master all those four. So the moment people respond to the gospel proclamation, they find salvation. There's a fifth sola. What's the fifth sola? The Johann Sebastian Bach signed this in all of his compositions. SDG. What's SDG for? Soli Deo Gloria. In other words, all the glory belongs to God alone. Here's the point. The plan of redemption is not limited to man. Okay, I hope you follow this. Okay? The plan of redemption, if I may quote the writings of Ellen White, had a deeper purpose. What was the deeper purpose of the plan of redemption? Was to vindicate the character of God, which means the center of attention in the plan of redemption is not man. The center of attention is God. I would like to submit to you right now that that's the reason why John Piper's ministry, Desiring God, is very successful. Of the evangelical and Christian pastors we have today, John Piper is very intentionally God-centered. So the whole of the Christian message and the whole of the Christian life is centered on God, not on you. Okay? I would like to think that that thought and that viewpoint did not originate from John Piper. I would like to think that that thought was introduced somehow in the Advent movement, which is the Adventist Church. And I often say that one of the greatest apologists or defenders of Adventism today is John Piper, although he's not an Adventist. Because you know what the difference of the gospel proclamation of Adventist is from the usual Christian proclamation? Whereas evangelical and Christendom today focuses on the justification of the sinner, what is the focus of the Adventist proclamation? It's in the justification of God. At the very center of the proclamation of the gospel message of this movement is the glory of God. Okay, now, how much we apply that, that remains to be seen. I think we beat ourselves into preaching more of our distinctive doctrines rather than the glory of God. I'm not saying we're not doing it, but I think we can be more intentional in doing it. So, is this unique to us? For those who have attended my sessions, my seminar on preaching, I do an expository preaching seminar. I quoted one writer. His name is, just for your information, Brian Chappell. Dr. Brian, I think that's why. That's his spelling. It's entitled Christ-Centered Preaching, Redeeming the Expository Sermon. But Brian Chappell wrote something in his book, considered to be the best preaching book today. Okay? The best book on the subject. No less than R.C. Sproul said it, a very respected Reformed scholar. But what he said was, to make a message Christ-centered, to make a sermon Christ-centered, you must show in your sermon how the seed of the woman gains victory over the serpent. So I always say this when I do my seminars and preaching. If you read that and I didn't tell you that it came from Brian Chappell, you would have thought that was taken from the Great Controversy or from Ellen White. Because that's exactly what we're trying to do. The proclamation of the gospel is not just about men, it is about God. Before Adrian erased the everlasting covenant, people haggle over the old and the new covenant. The covenant in Sinai and the new covenant. They forget the everlasting covenant. Why? Because we are so centered on men and what men does rather than what God has promised. The covenant is not about our promises. The covenant is about the promises of God. When did God promise the blessings of the covenant? Even before the world began. We studied this last week. That's why it's an everlasting covenant. Okay, so basically, we are concentrated on a paradigm. This is a perspective we have in the gospel proclamation, which is the justification of God. Now, if our concentration is the glory of God, how do we propagate such a concept in all our messages, in all our writings, the way we understand the Bible? This is now what we call the great controversy meta-narrative. Why is it called the meta-narrative? A meta-narrative is an overarching narrative, an overarching story. He's saying that all of the doctrines of the Bible, all the things that you will learn about God, falls under the umbrella of the great controversy. Okay, you following that? In other words, unless you contextualize what you're studying in the context, okay, of the great controversy, you will not be studying that biblical teaching or doctrine properly. Okay, so that is the theme of our quarter for the next 13th Sabbath. It is the great controversy. So what I'll do is I'll give you a very 50,000 view, feet above, very, very high level view of what the great controversy is, and we will try to relate it to how it will impact us as people who worship God. Okay? And we'll talk about the great controversy from the standpoint of the fall of Satan. Satan was defeated. How was he defeated? There are 3 stages of his defeat. And there's also there are 3 locations, if you want to call it, but these are the 3 stages. He met his defeat against Christ. Christ won over him before the world. Christ wins and has won over him in the world. And Christ will also win over him after the world. Okay? We talk about his downfall, we talk about his deviousness, we'll talk about his defeat, and then we will cover his destruction. Alright? Let's put things in perspective. There's one text in Jeremiah that I failed to share. I wanted to share it because I didn't have enough time in my lesson study this morning in Glen Ellen. I'd like to share it with you. Jeremiah 31 verse 3, if somebody can read that. So this will be a bridge to the new quarter from 31 verse 3. Mm-hmm.
The Lord has appeared of old to me, saying, Yes, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness, I have drawn you.
Okay, yeah, you of all people, you should appreciate what this verse means. You know how debased the people of Judah were, right? They were so bad they were judged by God. And God said, I'll take you into captivity so that you will learn to come back to me. And then he even introduces the new covenant. But the problem is, can they decide just to come back to God? They cannot unless God gives them the new covenant as a gift. What is the underlying power and enabling factor in the new covenant? This verse 3 is, I have loved you with an everlasting love, and that everlasting love and kindness will draw you. In other words, because of that love, you will be moved to love God back. Why did I start with this? Because this is very vital when it comes to the great controversy. Why did sin begin? That's the question. The origin of sin. How in the world can sin be found in a perfect creature like Lucifer? Those are the questions we will try to tackle in the next several minutes here. But the bottom line is, when God created man, He desired to have a love relationship with man. Okay, what is the primary requirement of love? Can you force somebody to love you? Can you scare somebody into loving you? No, it will not be love. That's why we have the term shotgun marriage. If there's a shotgun marriage, that means one of the parties in the marriage is not voluntarily loving the other person. He's being forced. All right? So if you cannot force somebody to love you, scare somebody to love you, or coerce and manipulate somebody to love you, how in the world can love happen alone? It can only happen if you're given a freedom of choice. When you're given the freedom, you can then freely choose to love back. It's very important that without the issue of free will, love will be impossible. That's why all these questions that comes, how in the world, why did God not just destroy Lucifer right away and Satan right away? Whack all this, always suffering today. This is a question of theodicy. Reason behind that is God doesn't want to force people. Can God force us to love Him? No. Can He manipulate us? He can do that, okay? But can you imagine, if you had the family going home to a robot, and then you program the robot and tell the robot, every time I come home, oh, I really care about you. You're the greatest man in the world. So, and then the robot will kiss you. Then, this is programmed. How will you feel living a life like that? It is not love. It's plastic.
Well, isn't it that the angels are like that?
No.
Because,
you know why
okay, if all the creations of God, those that have life, okay, have free will, the freedom to choose, like angels and humans. God Himself does not have that free will.
What do you mean?
By choice, He is to be the supreme, and everybody else has to follow
No,
Him.
not by choice.
That's not
by
His
nature.
choice.
By nature.
That's God's choice.
No, by nature. God, we will talk about that in a little while. But the bottom line is, did the angels have free will? Yes, the reason why we have Satan, right? Without the free will, Lucifer could have not fought. Why did God risk the free will gift to Lucifer and the angels and all of His creatures? Because it's not possible to love Him back unless you give them free will. You must love me based on your own accord. You must love me from your heart. And if I force you and I manipulate you, you cannot love me. That is not love. You know what we call it today? When somebody forces rape. God is not a divine rapist. That's what one theologian is saying. You must have somebody love you back, and for that to happen, you must set the person free. He must be free. Okay? So, let's go to the first part of the downfall of Lucifer. Okay? But before we do that, what was the whole issue when Lucifer fell? We have two passages. You guys know these passages, right? You got Isaiah 14, and you have Ezekiel 28. Somebody read Isaiah 14, 12 to 15. Somebody has it? 14, 12 to 15.
14, 12 to 15. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High.
Okay. Did Lucifer say, I would be greater than the Most High? Why can he not say that?
He will be like the Most High.
Why can't he say, I want to be greater than the Most High? Yeah, because it's going to be an oxymoron when you say, I'm going to be greater than the Most High. The fact that God is Most High, you're going to go higher than God. So what's the best thing you can do? You want to share the glory of God. You want to be worshipped as well, right? And this starts. So people miss this because we fixate again on the quote that we the vindication of God's character, and then that we can obey the law. This is what we talk about. They miss the whole perspective. Okay.
I have a question, Dean. Because in verse 12 it says here, O morning star, son of the dawn, you have been cast down to the earth, and you once laid low the nations. What nations?
Yeah, we will cover
existed
that.
back then?
We will cover that in a little while because we will talk about Job and Satan roaming, and then they said that Satan also fell when Jesus Christ died on the cross. I thought he already fell before Adam and Eve were created. So we will cover that. Okay, those are the issues we have to answer even before we start the quarter. But that's part of it. Let's just establish some basic principles that will guide us into understand. There's a passage in Isaiah, if you would be kind enough. Somebody read Isaiah 48:11. Somebody is
For my own sake, I do this. How can I let myself be defamed? I will not yield my glory to another.
Okay, did you hear that? I mean, 48, 43 of Isaiah talks about the glory of God. God basically says, I cannot share my glory with someone else. Why? Because I am the only one who's supposed to be glorified. And all the things that I do, all the providential acts that I perform, all the mighty works that I do, for whose sake does he do it? For my sake. These are the issue, and I was sharing some thoughts, biblical thoughts with my niece, Jolene. And do you realize that God wants to bring all the glory to himself? And then Jolene tells me, Uncle Bing, that's very selfish. Okay. Well, from our standpoint, it's selfish. But it's not selfish for God. Why? Because let's reverse the question. What if God gives glory to somebody else?
He's no longer God.
He will cease to be God. That's the whole bottom line. Bottom line is, the fact that he is God, nobody can be higher than him. He alone deserves glory and praise. Note this. If you read the Gospels and the proclamation of Jesus, even as humble as he was during the first Christmas, he took the form of a baby, right? And he stumbled, he just suffered physically because he took the infirmities of Adam in his physical body. But he had a lot of claims. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the bread of life. These are very outrageous claims. Nobody can just make that claim. No one goes to God except for me. Read Confucius, you read Buddha, you read all those. They don't do that. And then he goes, I'm going to die, I'm going to rise again. These are very outrageous claims. More than that, very important, very important. Jesus was a very humble man, right? But each time somebody decides to worship Jesus, did he refuse worship? He never refused worship. Tell me the two instances in the Bible where worship was refused. Remember John the Revelator? When the angel spoke to John, and then John was so overwhelmed with the glory of the angel, he prostrated himself and he started worshiping the angel. Don't do that. I'm a fellow servant like you are. Remember Paul and Silas? right? They healed this guy. And the people, the gods has come upon us. And this is the worst evangelism that we've done. You know, people are worshiping us instead of worshiping God. Don't worship us. Worship God. Then they start worshiping Jesus. Jesus didn't say, don't worship me. Worship God. No, he accepted the worship of people. Okay, let's establish the first proposition. Worship belongs to God alone. All right? That's why, if anything, the whole issue of this life is letting God be God. Let God be God. Don't be God. Don't be, because you're not God. Okay, the fact that worship belongs to God alone, that made the statement of Lucifer very sinful. Why is it sinful? Because in effect he's saying, I will ascend unto the holy hills. I will be like the Most High, which means, no God, worship doesn't belong to you alone. I want to have worship as well. I want your creatures to worship me as well. That's the original sin. Okay, original sin again is overtones because we talk about men. But the original sin, the first sin, the iniquity that came, was because the creature wanted to share the glory of God, which is the sole possession of God. Right? And because Satan wanted to share the glory of God, what happened to him? If you go to Revelation 12, 7 to the first part of 9. Somebody read Revelation 12, 7 to the first part of 9.
And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, the ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him.
Right. It says the great dragon was hurled down. They were cast out. Okay. What did they lose? They lost their place in heaven. Because we will cover this in a little. Because when you go to Job, God was asking Job where he was. What was the answer? Let's go there. Let's go to Job 1. Yep. Somebody read Job chapter 1. Verse 6 and 7.
One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? Satan answered the Lord, from roaming through the earth and going back and forth in it.
Oh! All right. When did this happen? After Revelation 12? Verse 7 to 9, or before Revelation 12, 7 to 9? It evidently was after Revelation 12. It happened in heaven. All right?
Yes.
Because
They lost their place in
they lost their place in heaven, and what happened? Satan brought the great controversy, the war on earth, by tempting Adam and Eve. Okay?
They were held down to the earth.
So, how are they able to tempt Adam and Eve? Because despite the fact that they lost their place in heaven, they were still able to move around. Right? What does Job say? I've been roaming through the earth and going back forth in it. All right? So there is a suggestion that somehow, even after they lost their place in heaven, they were still able to roam around the universe.
Maybe it's only Satan who was allowed because he was the leader. And the rest of the angels were still
There is no
confined.
explicit evidence there, but we know that a third of the angels was influenced by him.
But he claimed the earth that he's the prince or that he's. He claimed
Yeah, we
that
will go to that in a little while. That will explain why Christ earned the victory in Calvary. Okay, so when we say he was cast out of heaven, really what it meant was he lost his place. What was his place? It was a covering cherub, right? Which is Ezekiel 28. What's the meaning of cherub? The covering cherub means you are at the position closest to the throne. That's why you read the Bible, God says, I live in the midst of the cherubim. And remember the mercy seat? The cherub is the closest to the mercy seat, or the Shekinah glory, the closest to God. And really, the angel which was closest to God was Lucifer. Okay? when he rebelled against God to claim worship for himself as well, he was taken out of his position. Okay? That's what it's saying. He no longer held their position. In other words, he was no longer a covering cherub. Does that mean, though, that he wasn't able to go to heaven anymore? No. He was still roaming around. There is no biblical evidence that, we are told in the writings of Ellen White that there are other Adam and Eves in other planets, right? But they did not fall. Satan tried to tempt them. We don't find that in the scriptures explicitly. But this is a suggestion somehow, when you look at Job, that Lucifer went roaming around the universe. After he deceived 1/3 of the heavenly host, he wanted to deceive the creatures in other planets. Okay, we don't read that. That's beyond the scope of the Bible. But this is a suggestion that could have happened. All right? Okay, so basically, when he was first cast out, the first phase, the first stage of his defeat was he was taken out of his position. Okay? He was a covering cherub. No longer are you a covering cherub. There's no way you'll be a covering cherub if you want to usurp my glory, because the glory just belongs to me. All right? And we already said that the reason why God cannot share his glory is because if he shares his glory, he will cease to be God. What does that mean? If God relented and gave Lucifer what he wanted, what could have happened to God? He will cease to be God, and Lucifer will become God himself. It's an oxymoron. He's a creature. How can he be a creator? But that's how bent and crooked the logic and the thinking of Lucifer was. How can he be as God when in fact he's only a creature? But he got so enamored with himself, because if you read Ezekiel 28, he had splendor and beauty, and because of his beauty, what happened? Let's go to Ezekiel 28. There's one text here I'd like to share with you. Is Ezekiel 28, 16.
Through your widespread trade, you were filled with violence, and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mouth of God, and I expelled you, O guardian cherub, and from among the fiery stones.
Okay, so Ezekiel 28 talks about the beauty. I mean, this is a rebuke to the Queen of Tyre, okay? But when you read this is more than just an earthly king. Because if you read in Isaiah, Ben, you read that, how art you fallen from heaven? How can an earthly king fall from heaven, okay? Now, in Ezekiel 28:16, what happens that there's a word there used. What was that when you read it, Cleo? The abundance of your trade.
Filled with violence.
Trade, because that Tyre was, if you look at, it was a coastal city, and they had a lot. This was a trading route. The fact that a lot of ship and merchants were there, they were trading a lot of commerce and business. So
Maybe they traded opium also.
oh yeah, whatever they traded. But do you trade in heaven? You do not trade in heaven, so this doesn't belong in the context of the heavenlies. But if you look at the other meaning of the word used here in trading, the word used is gossip or slander. All right? That's why in the abundance of his gossip and slander, what happened? He was cast out. Why? What was the gossip and slander of Lucifer?
God was unfair.
Mm-hmm.
It was unfair.
All right. Why was God unfair?
Because God did not make Lucifer co-equal.
All right. And we're getting closer to that because people go steps ahead. Without, when we go to Job, what was the issue in Job?
He's blessed.
God said, have you seen my servant Job? And what was the answer of Satan? Oh, he worships you because you bless him. Right? In other words, without bribery, you cannot worship God. What was the issue there? The issue there was basically God cannot be worshipped for the sake of himself. You don't worship God for any other reason except for he is God. Because he is God, he is worthy of worship. And what was the deception of Lucifer? The deception of Lucifer is, nah, you will only worship God if you're bribed by God, if God does something for you. He's not worthy of worship for the sake of who he is. Okay? But even before we go there was a problem. What was the slander that the gossip that Lucifer started propagating in the heavenly host? Well, we look at this. What was his claim? What did he want to do? He wanted to be as great as the Most High. Okay, so what was the slander? The slander that Lucifer was giving all the angels was, look at God. He is such a selfish God. He wants to claim the glory for his own. He doesn't want to share the glory. That's very unfair. That's where the unfairness is. Where is the unfairness? The unfairness is that God doesn't want to share his glory. Is that unfair?
No. It's unfair for Satan because he's not
Because he
God.
was already proud because of his beauty.
Yeah, exactly.
Of your beauty.
It was not unfair for 2/3 of the angels. Why was it unfair to 1/3 of the angels? Because they wanted a piece of the glory of God. And when you hear people today, that's unfair, that's no fair, God is not fair. It's one mark that that guy is very selfish. Are you following me? When you think of yourself so much, it's so easy to say it is unfair for God. And unbeknownst to them, the same lie that Satan, Lucifer, propagated in heaven is the lie that he sends to people today, especially when we got issues. Okay? So what was the slander? Oh, God is unfair. He should share his glory. He's not sharing his glory. But God kept on saying, there's no way I can share my glory, because if I share my glory with you, I will contradict myself. I will no longer be God. And because I will no longer be God, then there's no point in worship. And if you don't know how to worship, all the universe will come into shambles, because the chief end of man is to worship God. Okay, if you want to jot this down, the Westminster Confession says, the chief end of man is to worship God and enjoy him forever. That's part of our church bulletin. Now John Piper rewrote that, and he said, it's not the chief end of man. The chief end of God, what? Is to bring glory to himself and enjoy himself forever. Is that selfish?
Cannot direct any more worship except himself.
Okay.
He's enjoying his time.
What's the meaning of alluding glory to yourself? I'll give you an example. How many of you were here last night? And if you guys made it last night, we closed with a very powerful song. It's entitled "Mary Did You Know," and we had Andrew sing "Mary Did You Know." You know, of all the Christmas carols that's available, thousands have been written. It's very difficult to write a song that can make it to the top of the Christmas carols in terms of popularity. Okay, until one day, Mark Lowry and Buddy Green sat down together and they wrote the song entitled "Mary Did You Know." How many of you have heard that song? You know, and that the part of the song that is very gripping, and I shared this last night, is there's a part of the song that says, you know that when you kiss that baby, you kiss the face of God. That's very powerful. You know, you're holding a baby, but that's God that you're kissing. And you know, the lame will walk, the blind will see. It's a story of the life of Jesus Christ. Very powerful song. Why did I say that? Because how popular did Mary Did You Know become? Pentatonics. Have you heard of Pentatonics? They have an Adventist background, a great a cappella group, a vocal group. They sang Mary Did You. There's 55 million hits on YouTube. That's how popular the a cappella version is. But 2014, Mary Did You Know by Pentatonics was top of the charts. All right? This year, 2015, you know what's top of the charts? Mary Did You Know, sung by Jordan Smith. I don't know if you've heard about Jordan Smith. Jordan Smith is the winner of The Voice. You've heard of The Voice, right? It spread like wildfire. It became viral because Jordan Smith, in one of his numbers, sang "Great Is Thy Faithfulness" of Salah. He comes from a Christian family. And then you know what was the final song? The song finale of Jordan Smith in The Voice. It's like a secular singing contest. He sang "Mary Did You Know," and he won the contest. Okay, fair and square. Why am I saying this? Because assuming we got some connections with Pentatonics, and we've got some connections with Jordan Smith, and we invite them to attend Fil-Am Church. Right? You follow me? So they sit down there. Pentatonic is right by the organ sitting there. Jordan Smith is sitting right by the piano. We had our praising, we had the sermon, we had the offertory, we did everything. And we were there for about 2 hours, right? You start about 9:30 and about 12, good 3 hours. We sat there. Pentatonics and Jordan Smith sat there, worshiped with us, and did not sing. We had them eat in the potluck. They had potluck with us. After they ate in the potluck, they left. What will you say? There you go. How selfish of Jordan Smith and Pentatonics not to sing and share how good their voices are. That's God wants to do that. He wants to share His glory. He wants to show you how glorious He is. Because the moment He shows His glory to you, then you will learn to worship. Are you following? There's one time I cannot forget where our congregation sang to the top of their lungs. That has not happened since. But that one time happened when the UP Concert Chorus was here. You know, we used to sponsor the UP Concert Chorus to have a UP Concert Chorus is one of the premium choirs in the Philippines. Janet Sabas Aracama, the directress, they were kind enough to sing for the second service. You know what their last song was? They sang How Great Thou Art. With the Negro spiritual taste, they started with Amazing Grace, How Great Thou Art. It was so moving. We sang How Great Thou Art for closing song. Everybody was singing to the top of their lungs. Why? Because they were so moved by such gift given by God. They were moved by that gift so that they can worship God as well. That's the point. God is not selfish in trying to show you His glory, because by showing His glory, then you will learn to worship Him. If He does not show His glory, then it will be selfish of Him. That's the reverse. In fact, if there were no Christmas, God will be selfish. Because the best glory revelation, the revelation of God's glory, was seen in the revelation of Jesus Christ. Okay, so the bottom line is, because God is the sole owner of worship, and He must be glorified alone, He cannot share it with any other. Lucifer violated that basic premise, and he sinned. And because he sinned, he was taken out of his position on earth. Okay? We will go to the prince of the world, Cleo, in a little while. Somebody read 9b and 12b. Revelation 12, 9b and 12b.
Hurled to the earth, and his angels with him.
Yeah, before that. The ancient serpent called the devil.
That ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray.
Oh, right.
Was cast.
Okay, he leads the whole world astray. 12b. Last part of verse 12.
He is filled with fury because he knows that his time is short.
Okay. So, because he knows his time is short, we'll talk about that later. Because he's judged by God. The fires of hell is reserved for him. If you go to Jude 6, we'll read that in a little while. Okay, they are meant to be destroyed in the end, but God is not destroying them yet, and we'll cover that too. The bottom line is, he deceives the earth. What is the deception of the enemy today? It is similar to the deception he gave to the angels. What is the deception of Satan today in our world? When he comes to you, how does he deceive you?
God is not fair.
Yeah, God is not fair. He tells you that in order for you to be really happy, you must win the accolades of man. Right? You must win the approval of man. People must worship you. People must appreciate you and give you honor. And when people give you honor, then you will be happy.
Like Trump.
Yes. Well, let's not cover some names. All I'm trying to say is, the deception of the enemy is saying you can find fulfillment and joy and delight by having the world fall at your knees and give you honor and praise. How many people fall for that? There's one term we use in this part of the world where people flattery. We call it the American dream. And then after the American dream was introduced, people shout, "Look out for number one." Who's number one? Me. A very self-centered generation. Why? Because the deception of the enemy is, dude, you have a very short life to live. Get as much honor as you can. Get as much possession as you can. Get as much toys as you can. So you get somebody who starts, the Malcolm Forbes starts the Forbes magazine. He who dies with the most toys wins. Until that one pastor said, what did the pastor say? He who dies with the most toys still dies. What's the bottom line? That's why he is deceiving you, because he knows his time is short. What do you do when you know you've lost? You know your end is there. How sure is the end of the enemy? Remember when Jesus approached the demoniacs in Gadara, and he wanted to, before he can even exorcise the demoniac, what did the demon said? What do you have to do with us, Son of Man? Do you want to punish us even before our time? They know that their time is coming and it's being short. It's about to happen. They'll be judged by God. So you know what this plan is? M.O., I don't want to suffer by myself. I want to drag as many people as I can. It will be more fun to burn in hell with other people burning with me. So what does he do? In his deviousness, he deceives people to say, hey, you must share the glory with God. We have several forms of that today. But it is no better than what the Bible calls idolatry. Whatever it is that occupies your attention more than the attention of God is idolatry. Okay? Verses 10 to 12a. Let's go to the second part.
Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren who accused them before our God day and night has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore rejoice, O heaven, and you who dwell on them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth, of the sea, and of the sea. And for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has a sword.
We talked about that. So, what happened there? We hear this in the Messiah, okay? This Christmas, right? But the kingdom, what happened? Now come the salvation and the power of the kingdom of God. Who does this kingdom belong to now? Belongs to
Christ.
To Jesus Christ. All right? So, let's answer the questions of Leo and some of your questions earlier now. Okay? If Satan was cast out in heaven before the world began, why was he still able to roam the earth? Why in the world is the Bible saying that he was again defeated? Somebody read verse 4 to 6.
And he sailed through a third of the stars of the heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up to God and his throne. Then the woman fled in the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days.
All right, okay. Follow me carefully. When did this happen? Did this happen in heaven? No.
No.
Because what is this alluding to? This is definitely alluding to the devil's attempt to destroy the man-child. When did this happen? In the time of the first Christmas. Herod did this, okay? When Christ was incarnated, okay? Trying to devour the man-child. So therefore it happened. And then he talks about 1260 days. We know about these 1260 days, about the Antichrist. Right. So really, another MO of the devil is not only to divide us, he will raise up somebody to take the place of Christ. You notice the difference now? Whereas before he just said, I will be like the Most High. I just want to share the glory of God. What is he now trying to do? He's filled with fear. He said, no, I'm going to replace the Most High because the Antichrist is a substitute for Christ. In other words, do not worship God, you worship me. You see how perverted it became? It started by saying, no, don't worship God alone, worship me too. Let me share the glory. He became so furious because he was handed this defeat. What did he do? No. God, you don't get the glory at all. I will get the glory for myself. That's what he did. Okay? And that's really what happens, right? The moment you start sharing the glory of God, isn't that true? Jesus is not above all unless he is Lord of all. It's true, right? I mean, I'd say all or none. Either everything is ahead of us, it must be Jesus Christ, or nothing at all. You cannot have part of Mammon and part of Jesus Christ. That's what Jesus is trying to say. So basically, let's see how this panned out. Because this is about the man-child and the 1260 days, this happened long after Adam and Eve were deceived by the enemy, right? In Genesis 3:15, everybody knows this, a evangel. I will put enmity between you and the woman and his seed. Okay? That's what will happen to the serpent. The serpent will bruise the heel of the seed of the woman, but the seed of the woman will crush its head. And that is the great controversy in a nutshell. What happened? Because men sinned, what happened? The seed of the woman will come. And when the seed of the woman came, why was the devil intent in killing the seed of the woman? Follow me. He started in heaven, he lost in heaven. He said, maybe I can win on earth when the Son of God comes down here, who defeated me in heaven. I will try to engage him in battle in my territory. Aha, that's your question. How in the world did the earth becomes Satan's territory? Because when we look at the creation story, what did God say? What? Have dominion over the created order, right? In other words, who's supposed to be the God of earth? Who's supposed to be the ruler of the earth? It should be man, okay? It's a reflection of the image of God, okay? But Adam and Eve lost that rulership. To whom? Go to Luke. Luke chapter 4, verse 6. And then somebody can go to John 12, okay? When we're done, so we'll read that too. Luke chapter 4, verse 6.
And he said to him, I will give you all their authority and splendor, for it has been given to me, and I can give it to anyone I want to.
All right, this is the temptation of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
If you will only bow down to me, what? I will give you all of this, because it has been given to me, and I give it to anyone over whomsoever I wish. What has been given to him? The kingdom of this world. Did Jesus say, no way, it's not yours, it's mine? He did not say that. He did not bow down, okay? Let's read other text. John 12, verse 31.
Now is the judgment of the world. Now the ruler of the world will be cast out.
Okay, John 14, verse 30.
I will no longer talk much with you, for the ruler of this world is coming, and he has nothing in me.
All right. Ruler of this world, right? Chapter 16, verse 11 of John.
Of judgment, because the ruler of this world is judged.
Okay, you read all these passages in John, it talks about the ruler of this world. Who is Jesus referring to in the ruler of this world? It's definitely Satan. So somehow Satan gained the rulership of this world, because via their sin, Adam and Eve relinquished the rulership of this world to Satan. I want you to hold on to this, because this answers a very important question. The question is, when was Lucifer cast out of heaven? Was it before Adam and Eve? Before? How come it's saying that after the man-child went back to heaven, he was again cast out, he was defeated? Okay? Question, was Satan the ruler of this world when Christ came? Yes. But when Jesus died on the cross, rose from the grave, ascended to heaven, this kingdom was given back to Jesus Christ. Right? And because it was given back to Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is our advocate, is our priest, we become a royal priesthood. This is now a kingdom that belongs to us, no longer to the devil. All right? So what exactly happened at the cross? If Satan was already cast out before the creation, how was Satan cast out at the cross?
Well, he still had access to we have for the text in Job.
Mm-hmm.
He had the access at the representatives of the planets at the at the throne of God. And in the moment, he killed Jesus, that thing was finished.
Okay.
The
No,
wages
no,
of
no.
sin is
When
death.
Jesus Christ shed his blood on the cross,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that was the end of the law. Because the end of the law was death. And all who accept Jesus Christ will not suffer the second death.
Okay.
Satan no longer could tempt a person and have that person be forever thrown away from the face of God through second death.
Okay. So
No more of the second
you're
death.
going into something really deep there, Benji. The question is Satan still tempting people today?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So let me cut to the chase. If you go to YouTube and Google Ranko Stefanovic, there's a presentation in 3BN by Ranko Stefanovic in Revelation 12. I think he offers the best explanation. Whereas during the first phase of Satan's fall or Satan's defeat, he was taken out of his position, right? They were taken out of his position. He's no longer the covering cherub. But he was still allowed to roam the universe. That's why he reported to God, and eventually God said, "Did you see my servant Job?" Blah, 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 blah. Okay? Somebody help me out. Read Jude 6. Jude 6.
And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their own home, this he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day.
Who? Right. Now this is Tartarus. What does the text say? Let's see. They did not keep their position. We read about this in Revelation. What else happened there?
They abandoned their own home.
Okay, then what?
He
This
was
he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day.
Oh, they were chained, reserved for the coming judgment. That explains the demoniacs in Gadara. They're reserved for the day of judgment. But they are chained. So a lot of people give you the doctrine. Look, there's the doctrine of hell. And the demons are chained in hell. They don't understand this. It's a terrific explanation. I'd like to share this. I hope the viewers don't miss this as well. So one day, Satan went to the councils in heaven. Everybody reports. They have representations for what part. He's been roaming the universe. He goes up to heaven. Then when he went up to heaven, God said, "You are out of here, and you are not allowed to go anywhere anymore. I will chain you to the world, just to the earth. You cannot go anywhere else." It's excommunication. Okay? This is not a physical ousting, but it is as painful as we can hear it today. Another word that they say use here is translated excommunication. Satan was excommunicated from the meetings in heaven. What does that mean? What's the word that we use? No, we don't use excommunication in our church. We use this fellowship. Can you imagine the church meeting? And here we have a very respectable member go in the meeting. There's a business meeting of the church. And during the meeting, the presiding elder or the presiding minister will say, "Brothers and sisters, we will expel our brother over here." You know how embarrassing that would be? That is the defeat of Satan when Jesus died on the cross. Are you following? They were meeting in heaven. God said, "No way, you're going to throw them around anymore. You get stuck and chained in the world." More than that, I got news for you. Although you claim that you're a ruler of the world is no longer yours. It belongs to my Son. You have no place in heaven anymore. You stay in the world. I will reserve you until the day of judgment. I'm going to destroy you eventually when the millennium comes. You get it? So he was ousted in heaven from his position before the world began. And when the world began, he infiltrated Adam and Eve, the garden, and brought the great controversy on earth. And he started deceiving men. And then Jesus came, and when Jesus died on the cross, Satan was then confined and chained into this world. He cannot go out of this world anymore. And more than that, he's no longer ruler of this world because the kingdom has been given to Jesus Christ. Are you following? This is very, if you missed that, but this is a very, very beautiful picture. That's why if you only understand this, you will understand the words in the Bible that says, greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Because if you're in Jesus Christ, the power of the enemy has nothing on you because you have won in Jesus Christ. Okay?
Excuse me. So that change that the devil will be clamped on,
It's a figure of speech. It's a figure of speech.
that is different from the time when Jesus Christ comes and takes the righteous.
That will be number 3.
Because there's another chain that
Yes,
will be
that will be number 3. The change that is mentioned in Jude 6 is again a figure of speech. He's chained in the sense that he cannot roam the universe anymore. He's stuck in this world. Okay? And worse, he's not only stuck in this world. God said, you're no longer ruler of this world. You don't call the shots. My son calls the shot. Because the kingdom now belongs to Jesus. And how did they overcome? They overcome him. This is the theme song of our evangelism. To the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Okay, in other words, the devil has no power over you. Okay, before we go to the last part, which Benji already brought up, there's one verse I'd like you to read, which is very important. It happened in Luke. Remember when Jesus sent the 70 and they started casting out demons?
Demons
Okay, all right.
they don't recognize.
Somebody look 10, 4 and 5.
Do not take a purse or bag or sandals, and do not greet anyone on the road. When you enter a house, first say peace to this house.
Okay, so you read this the passage here. He's talking about Jesus sending his disciples, right? To start evangelizing the world. And then they come back. They were so elated. They say, even the demons were scared of us, right? That's what they said. And then go to verse 20 and read verse 20.
Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven.
Whoa! Important, okay? Do not rejoice that the spirits are subject to you. What does it say? Does Satan still call the shots? No longer. Because the spirits are subject to us. Why are they subject to us? They're not subject to us because we're strong. We're subject to us because of what Jesus has done, right? So rejoice what? Not because the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice because your names are written in the book of life, and their names have been written in the book of life as a gift. It's a gift of grace. In other words, even your triumph over the enemy, if you win against the enemy, it is not your own strength. It is a gift from God. Are you following? Let me read the notes here. This reminder places human salvation firmly where it belongs, in the hands of our Savior. It is Jesus, not we, who has defeated the enemy. Did you get that? Will we have struggles in our lives? Yes, that's why you read Ephesians 6. Put on the whole armor of God, because we battle not against flesh and blood, we battle against principalities and powers, right? We're battling, this is a cosmic controversy going on. We're not just battling against divorce, against strained relationships at home, against losing a job and all the economic problems we have. We are battling against the enemy.
God said, you will have trouble in this world, but take heart, I have overcome
I have overcome the world. He did not say I have overcome the troubles of this world. He went farther than that. I have overcome the world. Because the world doesn't own you anymore. It has no power over you. Even if the world gives you a hard time, you rule the world now because Jesus rules it. That's very powerful. That's the good news of the second part. Okay, the second phase, second stage of Satan's defeat. So I hope that's very clear. He was just thrown out of heaven, lost his place, he roamed the earth. When Jesus died on the cross, he was chained into this world. Aside from being chained into this world, what happened to him? The kingdom was taken away from him. It was given to Jesus Christ, and then Jesus Christ in turn gives the kingdom to those who believes in him. That's why greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. And we already quoted it. In the world you will have tribulation. The devil will hurt as much as he can do you. But be of good cheer. Because even if there's a lot of trouble in the world, I have overcome the world. And if you're in me, you have overcome the world itself. It's very powerful, okay? Now, yeah.
Can you comment on that happening in Acts when some of the followers went to cast the demons, and the demons made fun of them, you know?
Yeah.
Because we know who is Paul.
Paul, Peter, no, I know, but you, who are you?
Yeah.
Okay, if you read that passage, really, why weren't they able to cast out the demon? They weren't not casting out the demons for the glory of God. They were casting it for their own profits. Because if that's the case, I mean, are we able to cast out demons today? Yes, if you believe in Jesus Christ, you'll be able to cast out the demons. You must assert your rulership in Jesus Christ, not because you're a ruler and you're fit to do that, but because you believe in Jesus Christ, you have the power to cast out demons in the name of Jesus Christ. That's what it's saying. The moment you start doing anything out of the gift that God has given to you for yourself, it's got to be messed up. For your, it goes back to the whole deception. Hey, do this for your own glory, right? I mean, in fact, that was the temptation of Adam and Eve. No, you will not die because the moment you eat, you will be like gods. And people miss this. They talk about the vindication of God's character and talk about the law of God. They talk about all of this. That's not the whole issue. The whole issue is the worship of God. Do you worship God? If you worship God, you must be willing to be like Him and follow Him even unto death, right? And then there'll be no issue about the law. How do you follow God? You read His Word. And whatever God says, if He's number one, you don't question it from your whole heart. You follow Him. You're going to follow Him, God will enable you to follow Him. Because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. All right? And you know what's going to happen in the last days? You don't have to read Revelation 20. There'll be a millennium. Right? What will happen? Satan will be chained. You hear that chaining again. That was in Jude. This time, it's not literal change because you're going to chain a spirit. Satan is a spirit. How is he chained? He's chained in the sense that there's nobody here who he can deceive. So the chaining is very miserable. Can you imagine living every day unable to do something you like? And this for 1,000 years. And you know what happened, right? After 1,000 years, all the wicked dead will rise again. And the devil will deceive them again. Aha! There's the God that doesn't want to share His glory. Let's take over and get the glory for ourselves. They attack the city, and what happens? Fire and brimstones fall from heaven and devour Satan and all his minions, together with the wicked. They die. When they die, according to Revelation, false prophet, the beast, and death died with them. I really like that part. How can death die? Only God can kill death, right? For us, it's an oxymoron, but God said, I'm going to kill death. Death's going to be gone. Everything's going to be gone. That's why it's an oxymoron to say there's an immortal soul. It's the fact that death is gone. There's no immortal soul traveling there suffering stuff, okay? God will get rid of everything and start everything new. That's only when the devil will eventually admit. How does it go in Philippians? As long as I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. In fact, if you read the writings of Ellen White, very poignant in the great controversy, he said, before the devil is punished and eventually destroyed, the devil will actually admit that God is just himself. Because every knee will bow. You know how the great controversy ends? This is the way it ends. Every knee will bow. Yes, Lord, to you alone belong the glory. You are the only one who is worthy to be worshipped. How did the world start? With God creating everything, showing His glory so that He alone can be worshipped. And the intruder came and said, no, I want to share the glory with God. Okay? Messed up the whole thing. He started deceiving people. It became so deceiving. What happens now? They just don't want to share the glory with God. They want to usurp the glory from God. That's why the whole era of the Antichrist will come here. we'll probably cover that later on. But we studied this in Jeremiah. The Antichrist will come. We studied this in Daniel. What's the purpose of the Antichrist? To get the worship of man, redirect it from the worship of God to the worship of the Antichrist. Okay? And people will attempt to usurp the glory of God and worship someone or something else other than God. That's the whole story of the great controversy. But how will it end? It will end where every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that God is indeed a God of worship, and He is Lord. That's why I love the fact that this is really a bad world that we live in today, right? Too much terror, too much uncertainty. But do we know how the story ends? Do we know how the story ends? Yes. How will it end? Jesus wins. And if you're Jesus, you're going to win with Him. And if you know that, you can surmount any trial that is hurled to you by the enemy today. Now, if your hope is only in this world, you will be of most men most miserable. Of all men, you'll be most miserable. Because if you focus your sights only on the material things of this world, instead of focusing your sight on Jesus Christ at the right hand of God, you will not find fulfillment, and you will not find the meaning of your existence the way God has designed you to be. Okay, so the good news is that if you're in Jesus Christ, you will win the battle because Jesus has won. And because I live, He said, you shall live as well. Right, so that's the whole summary. That's the big umbrella of the study we will have next week. The next lesson will be about the intrusion of the great controversy in the Garden of Eden, which is the entrance of sin among men. Remember, sin entered in the mind of an angel, and that angel deceived men on earth. So happens the Bible was not written for angels. The Bible was written for whom? Man, let me. If you guys don't have any questions, let me just share one text, and I'd like to end with this text. I'll go to Peter. 1 Peter 1:10. 10 to 12, and we'll end with that passage. 1 Peter 1:10 to 12.
Concerning this salvation, the prophets who spoke of the grace that was to come to you, search intently with the greatest care, trying to find out the time and circumstances to which the Spirit of Christ in them was pointing when He predicted the sufferings of Christ and the glories that would follow.
What about this? You got 12?
12. It was revealed to them that they were not serving themselves but you, when they spoke of the things that have now been told you by those who have preached the gospel to you by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven. Even angels long to look into these things.
Can you guys read the last part of that?
Even angels long to look into these things.
Wow. Because when Lucifer rebelled, he deceived 1/3 of the angels. And after deceiving 1/3 of the angels, into making them believe that God is a selfish God, God said, one of these days, I'm going to prove to you that I'm not selfish, that I'm really worthy of worship. Okay? If I might repeat to you, if you go to Revelation 5, remember the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders? They were bowing, laying down their crowns before the throne of God. What was the reason why they were worshiping God? Worthy of you of worship because you've created heavens and earth. That was the first worship. Then what happens? Nobody could open the seals. And then the lamb slain, it was like that it had been slain, opens the seals. And then the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures starts bowing down and they say, worthy are you. Why? Because you have died. You have shed your blood for us. So what am I trying to say? The reason for worship, for starters, was creation. The fact that it was God who did all of this makes Him worthy of worship. You know that Lucifer perverted that motivation to worship God because of creation? And we said, no, it's just created, we should enjoy this, we should share the glory of God. And then God said, you don't understand. If you do that, you will mess up the universe, even mess up your world. So I'm going to give you another reason for worship, which will be more powerful than the motivation of creation. What is the powerful motivation? The powerful motivation is redemption. how important is this? The last part of the passage says, even the angels long to see what's going to happen. Because of Lucifer's deception, they were being confused. They're not really clear. Is God really a God of love and a God of grace? Is really God worthy of worship? I will tell you what kind of God I am, says the Father. Send your Son, become the man. He dies for us. What did the angels say after that? All heaven rejoiced, right? Righteous are your judgments. Worthy is he to receive honor and glory and praise. You read that in Revelation, all the doxology that has happened. So the bottom line is, when everything is said and done and the great controversy is over, who wins? Jesus wins and God wins. What's the prize? What's the main issue of the great controversy?
God is just. God is just.
Well, more than just what did it say? God is worthy of worship. Don't forget that. The whole issue of the great controversy is worship. So when you study Daniel and Revelation, you study the Christian life, you study about the gospel, it's about the worship of God. And because it's about the worship of God, we learn to worship God, we will know the plan of God for our lives. And the good news is that Jesus has overcome. The prince of this world is no longer the prince of this world. God wrested that kingship from him in Jesus Christ. And if you believe in Jesus Christ, even the spirits will be subject to us because we believe in Jesus Christ. And the good news is, one of these days, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord.
And that is from one human to another, from one Sabbath to another.
Yeah.
7-day Sabbath. Right? So
Yeah.
what will happen to these preachers who preach concerning Jesus Christ, his death on the cross, salvation through Jesus Christ, and yet keep Sunday as their rest day?
What will happen to them?
Yeah.
If they trust God and they worship God from their heart, they will be led to the truth.
No, they really know the truth.
Yeah, well,
Days
the,
is
the problem is
Sunday.
the problem is you get derailed and look at the minors rather than the majors, because the whole issue is about worship. When I look at non-Adventists, who do that belong to my own persuasion, I don't judge them. I look at them and say, hey, they have a heart of worship. And if that heart is sincere to worship God, God's going to lead them to the right worship in the end. And they'll be part of us, because one of these days, there'll be no Adventist labels anymore. You're only the people of God who have the seal of God, the righteousness of Jesus. You are not an Adventist whose headquarters is in Washington, D.C., in the General Conference. You are part of the remnant of God who has the seal of God. So I'll give you an example. I know this might be controversial. But I had a series in Bolingbrook for the first time I came to America. I was doing a series in their church, helping out the pastor. And we had a prayer meeting and said, I pray for my neighbor, because my neighbor is not attending church anymore, because he couldn't find peace in his heart. So you know what he's doing now? He's attending the Baptist church next door. Then I turned around and said, what's wrong with that? I floored the Adventist. Well, how in the world can you say that? I said, what if God is using the Baptist church to actually refine his heart? And he'll come back and understand. He probably will not just come back to Adventism. He'll come back to God and worship God the way he intends. See, we are so fixated with the labels, with all of these religious organizations and institutions, we forget that the whole issue is worship. And when you fixate with denominations and institutions, it's what we call ecclesiolatry. You know what that means? You worship the church, you don't worship God. And that's one of the most dangerous idolatry, is worshiping the church rather than worshiping God. All right, you have something clear.
Praise like the Most High God when Lucifer wanted that, so he fell. But when you pray as we want to be like you, God. So how to explain that?
Oh, all right, okay. Those are two. They're worlds apart. When he said, I would like to be like the Most High, I mean, I'd like to be like the Most High being worshipped. I'd like to have the Most High being glorious. So his intent was to draw attention to himself. When you want to be like God, you are not drawing attention to yourself. In fact, saying, I don't want me, Lord. I don't want the way I live. I cannot live like this. Because I want to be with you. And if I want to be with you, I want to be like you. I'm not doing it for the sake of me. I'm doing it for the sake of being like God. How does Jesus put it in the Beatitudes? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. If you're pure in your heart, you find pardon and redemption and forgiveness in God every day. You'll become more like Him. What's a paradox? Maybe you can share this with your class. I always ask this when I share messages across the country. Compared to where you were 5-10 years ago, are you closer to Christ now than you were then? Most answers is, of course, I'm closer to Christ now. That's a trick question. If you go to steps to Christ, it says, the closer you come to Christ, the more sinful you become in your own eyes. And the true answer there is, oh my, if you only know how sinful I am. And the only people who can say that they're really sinful are those who have been in the presence of the glory of Jesus Christ. People who think they don't sin anymore, and then they're cool, they're so far away from Jesus Christ. Okay, so how does that relate to your question? Oh boy, the more you come to Jesus Christ, the more sinful you say, oh Lord, I don't want to be like this, please make me like you. And that's the paradox. And every time you want to be more like Him, the closer you are to Him, the more sinful you become, right? That happens. That happens. And will this ever end? Yes, it will end. When will it end? When Jesus comes back, the corruptible will take incorruption. This mortal will take on immortality. And you know what's going to happen? Every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So even if the believer, the disciple, wants to be like God, it's not like getting the glory of God. He wants to be like God because the closer he comes to God, the more sinful he becomes. The more he becomes unlike God in his own estimate. So he throws himself at the mercy of God every day. That's a paradox that you will take. And let me repeat that, right? Why will people get lost? They will get lost not because they've done something bad. They'll get lost because they've never really accepted forgiveness. Why did they not accept forgiveness? Because they don't know how to say, forgive me. Why don't they say, forgive me? Because they never acknowledge and recognize their sins. Only those who recognize their sins will come to God and ask for His forgiveness. And if I may go on a limb, Cleo, you know what it takes to become like God? The only way you can become like God is to accept His forgiveness more and more every day. You know what that means? You only become like God by admitting that you are not like God. And you become unlike Him more and more the closer you are to Him. But the more you say that, the more He showers His grace and forgiveness upon you. And you become like Him. Until the day, that's why Paul says, we groan in our spirits. Because, right? Because we as much as we want to be like God, we are still in these sinful bodies. And then Paul said, take heart, one of these days that body will be changed. And when that body will become changed, you will be like God, so you can worship Him. Why do you want your body to be changed? Not for your own sake. Okay, promise, last one. Huh? What did Johnny Erickson Tada say? You know Johnny Erickson Tada, right? Yeah. Quadriplegic over here. She's very athletic. She had that spinal injury when she was about 16 years old. Lord, I can serve you because I'm very athletic. I will serve you to my athletic gifts. Please make me walk again. God never allowed her to walk. So you know what she wrote? The song that she wrote? I already shared it with you. If I could fly, I'll fly to you. If I could run, I'll run to you. If I could, can you imagine that Johnny is saying, one of the most glorious days and one of the most glorious encounters when Jesus comes back is when I can walk and run again, because the first thing I'm going to do is to run to Jesus Christ. What I'm saying that in our sinful state today, there are so many encumbrances to true worship. We cannot worship God really the way we should Him. I mean, even if you attend church from Friday all the way Saturday, there's not enough in you that truly worships God because we are still sinners. But when Jesus comes back, all of those sinful natures is gone, and you will be free to worship Him. And the great controversy ends, and God gets the glory, and we worship Him until forever. We find true delight in Him. How does it end? In Psalms 37:4, delight yourself therefore in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. And to delight in God is to worship God. Okay, I hope that's enough introduction, but make this an overview, and I said we'll look at the rest of the lessons. Remember, the whole issue is worship. The first sin was trying to share the glory of God, it became worse because tried to usurp the glory in the end. What happens? Jesus redeemed the rulership of the world from Satan, and anyone who believes in him is given the rulership of the world today. And even if we have tribulation in this world, be of good cheer, Christ has overcome the world. Because in the last days, eventually, every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Okay, let's pray. Dear Father, thank you for this wonderful intro for the lesson this quarter. We thank you that even if there's a very big, large cosmic struggle that's going on right now between Christ and Satan, we have taken the side of the winner. And you've given all dominion and judgment and power in your Son. If we only believe in him, that same dominion and power will be granted to us by your Son, and we will rule with him. Teach us, dear Father, to take the side of the winner, who is Jesus Christ. And even if we don't have the power to do it, may you enable us to your everlasting love, through a heart that you'll give us to worship you every day, make you the first in our lives, and in doing so, truly understand what it means to worship you and make Jesus the head and the best of everything that we have, especially as we enjoy the rest of this Christmas season. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.